Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's final Writing Wednesdays workshop of the semester. Just a little plug, we do this every semester, 4 sessions once a month, regarding our partnership with the Academic Success Center's Writing Center and the library. So this is our final workshop of the fall semester titled Finding Your Flow, Navigating Final Papers. My name is Jasmine Shoemaker. I use she, her pronouns, and I am one of 6 reference and instruction librarians here at the AOK Library and Gallery. I'm going to pitch it over to Joe to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Jasmine. Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Lee. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Interlibrary Loan Specialist here at the AOK Library. I'm happy to be here with Jasmine and Chioma presenting on how to navigate your final papers, answer any questions you guys might have on the process, any sort of last minute questions you might want to have organizing your papers. We're happy to answer. And last but not least, I'm going to turn it over to Chioma.
Hi guys, my name is Chioma. I am a TA and I also work for the library. And Joe, Jasmine, and I are going to be presenting you this PowerPoint on how to write your final papers. I hope you enjoy.
Hey, excellent. Let's go ahead and move on to the agenda.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about, like we mentioned, the writing process, but we're going to start off with a short activity just to get you guys a little warmed up to see how the room temperature is on how you guys feel about writing. We'll also then dive into the research process and some tips and tricks on how to better refine your search results. We'll also give an overview of the Writing Center, the hours, and what's going on down the pike. We're also going to talk about organizing your paper, how to different types of outlines you can use, and sort of like the basic format you should be using when you're writing your paper. And then we're going to end with how to get research help. Next slide, please. Okay, so go ahead and click the tiny URL, share your paper topic and any writing concerns you have with us. You'll see a list of questions on the Padlet. But there's also at the very end, if you see like a parking lot. So as we go through the presentation, if you guys have any questions, you can either put them into the chat that I'll be monitoring and sending over to Jasmine, or you can put it in the parking lot section, which I believe is section 4 of the Padlet. Yes. And then have any library or research related questions put there, and we will make sure we address them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. So again, we'd like for you to start with these first 2 columns that you see here on the screen. I did put the link into chat. I see a few folks entering the Padlet. Thank you so much. This is really a chance for you to share anonymously, one, your paper topic, any concerns that you have specifically about writing said paper or writing in general. And then again, as Joe mentioned, we do have a parking lot section on the right-hand side of the page. Anything library or writing related that you might have, maybe it's about citations, maybe it's about, specifically the Writing Center, etc. All you'll need to do is click this little plus. I already see someone adding. And then you can type in your topic. Same thing goes for the concerns. Type in any questions or concerns you have along the way. I see one added here, cognition capabilities of 2 darter species. Interesting. I kind of want to know more about that, so maybe we'll get into that when you have the free writing exercise that we'll be doing towards the end of the session. Feel free to add to this. We'll be sitting here on the screen for maybe another minute or two. But again, that link is in the chat. I see someone put in chat just now. Do you mind reading that out loud, Joe? It disappeared.
Yeah, no problem. So, sorry, I wasn't sure if you saw. Okay, so we have a question that says or no, I'm sorry, not the question, paper topic that says the effects of local, state, and federal COVID-19 policies on the effectiveness of school leaders.
Ooh, Ooh,
which, yeah, that's a great topic. Very
I'd love
timely.
to read that paper.
Me too. It's a really good one.
Yeah, I'm seeing my paper topic is about Black urban utopias and explores how cities of today do not meet the needs of Black people who live in them. That's really interesting. There is a new HBO doc about like the reverse Great Migration of more Black populations now leaving northern cities and eastern cities and then like going back down south. So I'm wondering if that might have something to do with that too. Like this idea that our grandparents and great grandparents had about this like betterment is now flipped on itself because our needs are different, our education background is different, etc. That's really great. History of a book. Yeah, we just had someone, their name is Dr. Lindsay DeQuirchi of the English department, come and speak about their research of book history. Remember we talked about this, Joe?
Yep.
Lindsay was here last week.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a good person to reach out to also, Lindsay DeQuirchi, if you wanted to speak to them more. They're in the English department. Great work, everyone. Schizophrenia diagnosis and treatment. Love that. It's very relevant.
Very relevant, very important. Yep.
And I'm seeing under the concerns section, I worry I sound too informal while writing academic papers. I think that is a very normal, valid concern that you have. Specifically as maybe a newer student or a freshman, kind of, seeing that academia is different levels of writing, especially if you, um, are in this unfamiliar background class. We'll talk a little bit about that. If you're just now joining us, feel free to join us in the Padlet that we have. We've got a good Padlet going. Putting that link into chat for you now. Organizing my paper and having my paragraphs flow into each other. We're actually going to talk a little bit about this too as we move forward. This is really great. I appreciate the transparency and the vulnerability shared on the Padlet. Again, this is anonymous. Feel free to keep adding to this. How to correctly organize a research paper to make it more cohesive. I think these two might be very related. So we'll talk a bit about this.
This
So
is
I
great,
don't,
you guys.
yeah, I love this. This is great information. I want to actually point you guys to this section again. If we are going through a lot of things in the next 45 minutes or so, and you're like, oh, wait, I want to talk more about this, or I have a question about citing or something, please utilize this parking lot section. We will be coming back to this at the end. We want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions. So go ahead and leave this tab open. I'm going to go back to our presentation and we'll get started. So a little bit about the overall research process in and of itself. I think this is a very nice timeline or like flow that can be applied to any discipline, right? Social sciences, humanities, etc. So I think to begin, I'll give you guys maybe a topic example, right? The first step is to determine and narrow your topic. Say, for instance, you're writing maybe your first history paper and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a history major. What am I doing? What's happening? So you'll want to actually narrow your topic and make sure it's pretty focused. So say, for instance, you're really interested in the Pacific Theater of World War II. Well, that's pretty broad. A lot happened in that area of World War II, so you may want to narrow your focus a bit. So you could maybe narrow it to a specific battle or a specific year in the Pacific Theater, etc. So that'll also help you with step 2, which is gathering background information. This could be utilized either by a mix of library resources, maybe some class readings or notes that you took along the way, etc. Step 3 is all about creating your research question. What do you want to determine or find out about that overall topic, right? Next, you'll need to develop your thesis statement, which is basically the claim or the main point of your paper. And last but not least, I think is the time where you're like, oh, now it's actually time to sit down and write it all. It's okay because one, drafts are your friend. It is important to note that you should not do a lot of writing last minute, because then you'll be pressured to submit something that may not be something that you're proud of or necessarily have your all in. It may not have that cohesion that you mentioned on the Padlet. So yeah, write, cite, drafts are your friend. And citations can be confusing. Also, double check with your professors to make sure you are citing in the correct citation style. And we do have resources at the library to help with that.
Thanks, Jasmine. So now we're going to go a little bit about searching tips for OneSearch, which is our library website's main search engine, and then also Google Scholar. So, Jasmine, if you wouldn't mind going into the OneSearch, thank you so much. So this is what the main page looks like of the library. I'm sure a number of you have seen it before. If you go to the articles tab that Jasmine clicked, which is in the very middle of the page, this is where you can kind of do a similar search that you would through Google Scholar, where you can start typing in topics, or if you have heard of an article that you want to look up further into, this is where you would type it. So let me give you guys an example. So Jasmine, if you wouldn't mind typing in stem cell research for me. Perfect. So notice how when we search, it's three separate words. So a tip that you can use to kind of make sure that it's just stem cell research and you don't get results of anything involving like stem, anything involving the word cell, because there's so much, so many like stem studies on just cells alone. Um, or just like a very vague results on research. You can put quotes right by the before the word STEM and then after the word research. So that isolates that phrase so that the results you get are only about stem cell research. So which Jasmine has shown beautifully. Thank you. So would you mind clicking search for me, Jasmine? Awesome. So the results that show up, like I said, should only be about stem cell research, nothing else. Right away, you can see a lot of relevant results, but it's a lot, right? Over 100,000. So there are a couple tips and tricks you can do to kind of narrow down your results to get closer to what you're looking for. Maybe as you're thinking about paper topics, you see one that seems interesting. A tip I have is try to have a running document of like lists of interesting sounding topics or articles that you see in your search results that you want to return to. That way you kind of save time and you're not going at it one at a time. If you have a running list of documents of the sources that you see that seem like a possible lead in for your paper, just have a list. And then as soon as you're done combing through the results, you can go back to that list and dive a little deeper. If you look on the left-hand side of the OneSearch results, you'll see like the filters, right? So this is where you would go to kind of hone in the results and narrow in to see, to kind of like refine your search more. So for example, if you see under where it says limit to, you'll see the options peer reviewed, full text, and available in library collection. If you want it to be only available in the UMBC library collection, that's what you would select. And then it updates in real time, and you'll see that the number of the results at the top have changed. And it's only going to show you what you can access through our databases here at the library. Um, Maybe you want to go through peer-reviewed papers, like maybe your assignment, excuse me, maybe your professor for your assignment said, I only want to see peer-reviewed articles cited in your papers. Make sure that's what you're looking at. You can check that box off, and then you'll notice that the results became refined even more. So it's now less than 100,000. That cut a lot of it off. Still a lot, but you're getting a little closer to the criteria of what's needed for your paper. If you need more recent results, or if you want full text, you can select that too. So that'll only show full text results. Hopefully that should cut it down some more. A little bit, not really by much. But if you want to kind of limit it by time, right? Like I can only use articles that were published within like 5 years. You can use the slider at the bottom, or as Jasmine is doing, you can type in the actual year to give that limit of time range. And then the results should show articles that are published within that 5-year frame. So bam, right away we went down from like 70,000 to like 40,000, which is a lot. So just there are a lot of other options, like for example, source types, subject, publisher, language. So play around with it. We really recommend that you play around with these limiters and these filters so that like you can kind of change the flow of topics and you can kind of refine your search results better so that you know what you want to include and what evidence you want to start gathering as you start to think about your paper topic. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and go to Google Scholar. So Google Scholar is a great tool to use if you want to go kind of outside of the scope of just UMBC, right? So let's use the same search. We're going to type in stem cell research once again. And by the way, the tip that I talked about using like the quotes around also can be applied here in Google Scholar too. I hadn't mentioned this for the one search, but for the Google search too, I highly recommend kind of playing around with synonyms, right? So don't just think about stem cell research. You can type in stem cell theory. You can type in like stem cell medical. You can type in like cell medical research. Like play around with the words. Don't just box yourself into one phrase or one word, because then you really miss out on exploring a lot of other different topics that have to do with that possible research idea. So you'll see here that the results that come up for the stem cell research, if you also look on the right, you'll see some options for full view or PDF. If you click on the HTML or any of the PDF links, that's the access that UMBC can give you through the databases that we have to give you that PDF of the article. Also, this is like a pro tip. This is how we in ILL, in Interlibrary Loan, find a lot of the articles that we send to you guys too. So if you kind of want to just save time, if you see that PDF or full view available, chances are you can just get the download of that study and use it for your paper. Before we move on, am I forgetting anything, Jasmine? Did you want to chime in?
No, I would just reiterate that if you are utilizing Google Scholar, just make sure that you are signed in here with your UMBC credentials and not your personal account. Because we are signed in with my UMBC credentials, it lets me know that we have access to a lot of these via the UMBC library. So that's just a little pro tip. And if you need help, ensuring that you're signed in with the correct one, you'll just need to click the avatar here. And we can talk about that later. You can shoot me an email and we can discuss more if you needed more assistance with that.
Yes, thank you so much, Jasmine.
Of course. Okay, so Joe went over the basics of searching the one search, which is the main search bar on our home screen. Now we'll talk a little bit about the advanced search, right? So you may be thinking, well, Jasmine, why is there an advanced search? Isn't that what we just searched? No. So the advanced search breaks it out a little bit more. It is kind of hidden, but not really. It's hidden in plain sight. So under the articles tab where we searched before, let me reload the page. We'll click articles and then preferred advanced search, which is underneath the search bar, click here. So one thing about this is that it does let you search multiple keywords or phrases at a time. So the cool thing about this is you can put education and prisons, right, in two different search bars. The other cool thing about the advanced search is it lets you do those limiters that Joe mentioned before you even click search. So for instance, if you know that your assignment is to incorporate 3 peer-reviewed articles, you can go ahead and check peer-reviewed. If you know that you need absolutely full text, you can go ahead and select full text. From there, you can go ahead and click search. So like Joe mentioned before, using those quotes with a phrase will keep all that together. Because we're searching words as separate, it will not be together as a phrase. You can see with this one. The cool thing also about the advanced search is you can select here on the right side next to a search field where you want this keyword to be. So say for instance, we really want the word prisons to be in the title. Choose this drop-down arrow and click title. Another popular one would be abstract or the summary of the article. So our number should go down, went from 218 to 8,000. And again, prison should be in the title. You can still use those limiters after you do an advanced search, but that does kind of, doing it ahead of time will really help limit and fine tune narrow your topic and your search a little bit more. Another thing that I'll mention is we talk about more resources specifically for your subject are the subject guides, or now commonly referred to as the research guides. Those can be found under the research help section and research guides. Someone mentioned doing some work on schizophrenia. You could actually go by that department. So I would say maybe the psychology department or the public health area. So you would go by your department here. Maybe I'm interested in psychology. From there, we have different or the top rated databases around that subject area. So you can actually click into these databases and do similar searches to the ones I just did and Joe just did. Also in these research articles are information regarding your respective subject librarian. So if you did need more one-on-one help with like finding things for your research paper, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You're literally why we have jobs. I hope this makes sense. Please feel free to pop any questions into chat or unmute and also utilize that parking lot. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Chioma is going to talk a little bit about thesis statements.
Okay, I hope it's not too loud in the background and then a kind of noisy place. So this slide is talking about what a thesis statement is, which is the beginning, the end, the entire like interval, like structure that you use to base your essay. So as you can see, a thesis is a response to something. It's like a question, it's a response to a source, or it's a response to like data that you've gathered. It's like an arguable position. You either say yes or you either say no. It's a claim, and then it can also be changed depending on like what the data says and whatever you're trying to argue. A thesis isn't a question. You're supposed to be proposing a response. It's not a fact because you're supposed to be proposing an opinion. But it's not an unsupported opinion. You still have to have data to back up whatever you're saying. And if a thesis can't be changed, like if it's fixed on that one position, then that's more of a statement, which isn't a thesis, where you're trying to argue something here, and an argument can always be changed. So on the next slide. So what is a thesis? Thesis will tell you what the essay is about. It should have, typically professors ask for 3 sub-claims in a statement, and you should have in your thesis statement what position you're taking and then those 3 sub-claims. Those sub-claims will tell the reader how your essay is going to support whatever claim that you're making. And then also it should also address like why people should care, like why, aside from like getting your professor reading your paper and like getting a good grade, like in the grander scheme of things, why should people care about your paper? And are you actually going to be able to change someone's mind? Because like that's what a thesis statement is for, to convince someone to agree with your argument. And next slide. Jasmine?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
We'll talk a little bit about the organization and how to organize your essay in terms of an outline, right? A basic outline. This could be used across the disciplines. So we could start with a basic introduction, right? Your introduction could incorporate a hook, something to grab your reader's attention. This could be a quote from a scholar in your field. Be sure to cite it. And this will give some background information on the topic or issue that Chioma mentioned, the claim. Keep this brief. You will be talking a little bit more about this in your body paragraphs. And then again, you will need to state your thesis, right? What is the claim or the main point of your paper? Next, we have the body paragraphs. This could be begin with a topic sentence where you introduce what section the paragraph will be about, and this will tie in sources and include analysis throughout. And then as you go through, you'll have different body paragraphs. You'll be doing that throughout. Then you'll finish up with a conclusion. Your conclusion will need to rephrase your thesis. Don't just copy and paste the thesis from your introduction to your conclusion. You'll need to restate it or you'll need to reiterate it, rephrase it somehow. So everything, all of those points that you've listed throughout should be tied back to your thesis in the intro. You always want to relate it back to that. You want to stress why this is important. Why should I care? Why do I need to care about this? And then last but not least, just reiterate, it really does matter. And it shows that you paid attention throughout your own writing. Here's another way this has been commonly organized or presented, especially to students. You may have seen something similar to like this in high school. I know that this was laid out to me like this in high school, but it didn't really make as much sense in terms of like relating things back. But just to add, you will need to wrap up any loose ends. So in that conclusion section, any questions that I had as a reader while reading your paper, I shouldn't still have those questions when I'm reading your conclusion, right? Again, every single body paragraph, different ideas should be connected and should go back to that main thesis statement at the top.
All right, so a little bit more about organizing an essay. This is another way to do it. This is called source-based listing. So kind of like an outline of how to guide your paper as you're writing it. So as you can see, source one begins with the main ideas and key takeaways. Like as you're reading through the sources that you've gathered into that listed doc that you did when you were searching the results, what were the main ideas that the authors were trying to convey through their research, through their work, through their publications? What could you kind of use to spin into your thesis? What can you use to argue against it? And then as you move on, you'll develop a number of main ideas, right? So hopefully you get at least two per source. So you want to use supporting quotes and refer to specific sections of the publication or the article that you're citing. You kind of always want to summarize not just A, what it's about, but B, the significance of what it has to do with your own paper. Why are you citing this person? Why did you choose to have this evidence be in your paper, and how does that support your claim or refute your claim even? And then important part, last but not least, throw back to thesis, right? It always goes back to that thesis. The thesis is pretty much the meat of your paper. It is what you are arguing and what you are trying to convey to your readers. So like I said, what relation does the source that you list have to your own argument, right? So if we go back to the stem cell research, like we know that's a very controversial topic. There are some like ethics behind stem cell, and there are several scholars that are for or against stem cell research. Maybe your thesis is about, using stem cell research to advance medical studies. In that case, you're going to want to pull not just from studies that support it, you also want to pull from studies that may refute it or take the other position in the argument so that you can say why you don't really, I don't want to say disagree, but you want to say why you think your position or your thesis bears importance. So you don't want to trash the source that's not necessarily agreeing with you, but you still want to acknowledge that it's there, that it's not always just pros. There are cons to certain things too. And this is the kind of like for source-based listing, at least, this is kind of the format that you want to follow for each source. And then Jasmine, if you could go on to the next slide, you'll be able to see how you should format it, or maybe an easier way to see it once you start jotting it down on paper. So once you put it into a Google Doc or a Word doc, this is a really neat way to organize all of your sources. That way, when it comes time to actually write your paper, you'll have it right there front and center. You can just pull those main ideas and supporting quotes and just plug them into your paper. One thing I do want to note though is that you don't want to just copy paste the quote, copy paste whatever they're saying. You always want to paraphrase and you want to summarize the main ideas and just use those quotes as evidence. Don't just say, here's what this person said, and then move on. You always kind of want to lead into it with an opener and then have the quote or the evidence, paraphrase whatever they said, and then kind of have like a closing sentence to tie everything together. Everything has layers. So any questions so far about what we went over in terms of source-based listing and how to format your papers? If not, we'll always go back to the parking lot questions. So just another little reminder that it's there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Joe. So let's talk a little bit about revision strategy for how to actually, revise your essay. So this technique is called reverse outlining. You may be thinking, what am I doing? What is reverse outlining? Well, this is basically a process of taking away all of that supporting writing that you actually gave, and then you're going to be left with those main points that you found throughout. So by the end, you should have these main points, which should tie back to your thesis. Again, that's kind of like your beacon in all of this. So again, various steps on the screen include writing a draft. A complete draft is best. It just makes sense to have a complete draft to be ordered to determine what needs to be revised, the flow, the structure of things. Then isolating the main idea of each paragraph. Once you're done with this could be like a bulleted list of those main points, right? Those need to be identified with a direct connection back to that thesis statement. So again, it doesn't need to be anything lengthy, anything, really, harsh, just something that always goes back to your thesis statement. And again, this is done in order to really look at your essay critically for organization and structure, right? Does it flow nicely? Does it make sense? Do the main points, are they cohesively there, etc.? And it can also determine if you're repeating yourself over different paragraphs, right? I think sometimes, especially in a rush, we'll just say something and then maybe the next page we'll say it again, and it doesn't really make sense to restate it. And it can also really kind of be there as a guide to say, are my paragraphs too long or too short? Does it all make sense?
All right, so here are some revision strategies for grammar. Reading out loud is a huge one. So I can't tell you the number of times where I would catch myself, like Jasmine said, repeating a certain word or phrase over and over in my paper. And then I have to tell myself, oh crap, like I need to find a different word to use. I have to find a different phrase to use. Jasmine and I are actually co-writing a paper right now, and Jasmine can attest to this, like how many times I would say a paragraph out loud to make sure that we don't repeat a certain word a number of times. So I'm telling you guys, it really does help. Read the essay out loud or have it somebody else read to you, because when you're working on one document for so long, you can miss a lot of things. But then having somebody else read it to you or a fresh pair of eyes see it, you're like, oh, I didn't realize that I missed this, or I didn't realize that, there's a perfectly other good word to use instead of this like 5 times in that same sentence. And then make sure to read exactly what is on the page. So make sure you don't actually accidentally add words or correct a mistake automatically, because that defeats the whole purpose, right? The whole purpose is to catch those mistakes and make those changes so that by the time you turn in a finished draft, your final copy, it will be polished. And then finally, if a sentence feels awkward, take another look at it, because chances are it needs a little reworking. So if something just doesn't sound right, if you read it out loud and you're like, wait a second, like, I don't think I'm supposed to end on a preposition. And then if you go back and you're like, okay, I see what I did there. And if you kind of quickly just tweak the sentence and then try reading it out loud again, that means you've fixed it or you've worked towards constructing a better sentence than you did before. So this is part of the reason why Jasmine had stressed not to write last minute, because you need that time to kind of go over your paper, go over what you've written and catch those possible like mistakes. Sometimes also they're very easily fixable too. So you don't want to say, okay, I'm done, and then realize upon rereading it after you've already turned it in, oh crap, like I missed this, error that could have totally been fixed had I given another closer look. So please allow yourself time to edit the paper, to edit your draft. Don't just like type it and say you're done and then call it a day.
That's a great point, Joe. And I'll even use myself as an example. I was a history major in undergrad, and my roommate was a chemical engineer. So we were very different. So I would actually, utilize her and see her as a resource to say, hey, Sheila, can I read my History of Africa 300 paper to you? Am I giving enough background to someone who may not be as familiar as I am with this, topic? And it would actually really work because she'd be like, that doesn't make sense, or you're assuming that your reader already knows this background and you need to give more. And honestly, it's because I was lazy. I didn't want to write all the background. So this is me saying to you, this is a lesson that I learned the hard way, and I want better for you all.
We all want better for you guys.
Yeah. So now we have a short activity still on that Padlet that we had in chat earlier. I'm going to put the link back in just in case if you all needed that again. We have a short free writing activity. I'd say no more than 10 minutes, just to free write different ideas or themes or possible outline. It could be short little hash marks or bullet points in that Padlet on the second half of the screen. I'll go ahead there now just to share what I'm talking about. Not that one. There we go. So back on the Padlet here, the third section, we have our free writing piece. So we have about maybe 8 to 10 minutes, we'll say 8 to 10 minutes that we have allotted for you to free write any ideas that you have for directions for your paper, right? Maybe you've been thinking about a thesis topic or thesis statement for your paper as we've gone through sections of today's presentation. Maybe you've been thinking about a ways to organize it. What are some themes you can put in your body paragraphs? Feel free to share. Again, it's anonymously. You will have the option here under the prompt to plus it, and then you can write your ideas here. This will not be visible to anyone until you hit the publish button. So feel free to type, erase, whatever. We will not see it until you are ready for it to be seen by others here, and it is anonymous. So we'll give everybody until about 4:50, I'd say, and then we'll come back and maybe discuss. I do see a question here about concerns that I wanted to read out loud while you all are doing that exercise here. We have somebody said, sometimes when I do my plagiarism check, it shows AI while I don't use it to write. What do I do at times like these? That's a great question. I'm wondering if you have something like a Grammarly on. Like Grammarly, it's like a plugin. I don't know if you guys can see it on my screen here. It's a little like orb thing here in green. It's like a way that people can like use to fine tune writing for clarity, mistakes, things like that. That's considered AI. So if you're using it in your writing or another tool such as that, that might be um, flagging it as that. Another thing that could be like registering that, and I'm not sure, is if you're not citing things properly. I know with again, any type of like Turnitin.com and things that faculty use to, see if anybody's cheating or, plagiarism or anything like that, it's very finicky. So if you do have questions about plagiarism or anything like that, I think you're in the right place because I am the co-chair of the Academic Conduct Committee. So if you have questions about plagiarism, please contact me. I'd hate for anyone to get dinged for plagiarism, especially if they are not um, doing any of that. Joe, did you want to speak on anything about AI related with this?
Yeah, I also want to caution. So I'm curious as to what software you're using for the plagiarism check, because sometimes like those softwares themselves can be AI. And so like I caution you guys when you use that because it's not always very accurate. Um, the other thing I can think of is probably like Google Docs, whenever you guys are typing and then you notice how like it suggests a word or like it's learned pretty much like your writing style. And so it'll sometimes try to complete sentences for you. Like that's also considered AI. Um, so yeah, I would just check in with your professor. I understand the worry though, and I understand the fear because it's like, with this new AI that's coming about, like, sometimes it's like, am I plagiarizing myself? Like, oh my God. So like not to worry, as Jasmine said, like we are more than happy to answer like any worries or concerns you might have. I will also say that if you are that worried, you're probably fine. Like that means you're like trying to take the necessary precautions to make sure that it's your words. And if you're trying your best to put in your original thoughts and opinions, um, if you cite something and if AI picks that up as, oh, like, this is copied or this is plagiarism, it's not. It's just you trying to cite. I've definitely used Turnitin.com. That's another one that is frequently used in academia, I feel. And like every time before I would turn a paper in, it would have all these red marks of plagiarism, and I'll be like, oh my God, did I accidentally plagiarize somebody? But then upon closer inspection, turns out I was just rephrasing or citing from another person. So that could also be the case. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us if you have any worries. And if you are still concerned, reach out to your faculty and just let them know. I think faculty would appreciate you reaching out to them to talk about these worries more often than not. And I'm sure they'd be happy to talk about it with you in depth too.
That's a great point, Joe. I can attest that faculty love it when you actually come to them for concerns because it shows that you're invested in yourself. You are paying to be here, but that you are, um, paying attention to what's happening around you, like what's happening regarding your paper and your own analysis of what you're trying to write, what you're researching, what you're reading, what you're taking in. So I think they appreciate it. I do also want to comment on the concern at the very bottom, how to write perfectly about code to not have jargons in paper. Um, there are a lot of departments and fields, disciplines that have a lot of jargon, right? Even AI, right? Is just some people don't even know that it stands for artificial intelligence. So I feel like, it is important to spell things out. I personally, even if it is kind of you're writing something for your professor for a class and that person or professor is a scholar in that discipline, write things out. I mean, especially if you're introducing something for the first time in a paper, always spell it out. And then in parentheses, you can put in, the acronym. So for instance, I always tell even PhD level students when they're presenting at a conference or a paper, please do not put UMBC, especially if you're presenting at a conference clear across the country. No one knows what UMBC is in Washington State. Spell out University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and then you can put in UMBC. So that's one kind of like easy fix that I found. But yeah, if you ever have any questions about like having jargon in your paper, just spell it out. And then you could, again, like Joe mentioned, it's always best to go to the faculty for any questions, which is why we're like, please do these papers ahead of time. And again, drafts are your friend, right? If you go to your professor with a draft or your TA with a draft, and you're like, am I using too much jargon in this regarding code or my understanding of this? They can, kind of direct you and be that pair of eyes for you in terms of your draft. So I think that's a really good concern that you have. It's valid, but I think it is it's workable. Like it can be worked through. So I don't see any takers. It's been about what? Has it been 10 minutes? Not
Yeah,
necessarily 10 minutes.
yeah. I mean, are we giving them till 52? Because then in that
It's
case,
until 52.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
two
can
more
have 2 more minutes.
minutes. Yeah, 2 more minutes on this free write exercise, and then we'll move on. We're about finished, but we just want to give you guys an option or the yeah, yay.
Also, I was going to say, you guys don't have to worry about like writing incomplete sentences or writing a full-blown
Yeah,
paragraph. Like this is just a free write exercise. Just get your thoughts on papers to get your like juices flowing.
yeah.
So don't worry about having it be perfect on screen.
That's a great point, Joe. And again, this isn't fourth grade. This is all anonymous. I'm reading this now, talking about how psychologists have diagnosed schizophrenia historically through some main psychological lenses, behavioral, biological, etc. Mm. I'm interested now in reading your paper in terms of like, I'm wondering like, is your stance like, is that too close-minded? Or are there now new ways to diagnose schizophrenia, right? Are we, what time period did this take place in versus, the now? Really interesting topic. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I am by no means an expert on schizophrenia or mental health, but I've definitely heard that um, a lot of misdiagnoses of certain like mental health issues. And I would love to see that come up in your paper too. Like some of the problematic terms used, or like one term used as a blanket for all these other very, very
Mhm.
different or very specific types of mental health concerns. So, yeah, this is a great topic.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Feel free to keep sharing. We're going to go ahead and move on so we can finish up. So now we're going to hand it over to Chioma, who will talk about getting help after today.
So, if you guys still have any questions, you could always make a research appointment with the librarian. You can request articles, book chapters, loans through their website. You can also request like technology, like the MacBooks, Dell laptops, or like the Chromebooks. If you don't have any of that, we have a copy machine at the library. We have computers for you to use. We have printers. We have a lot of stuff in case you need any type of help. We have library chat from Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And also, I learned this the hard way. The library chat is a real person. Because the first few things that she said sounded like a bot. So I was responding kind of impersonally. But then she said something that made me realize she was a human, and I felt bad because I was like a little bit rude, but not on purpose rude. So it's a real person that's helping you. And then we also have the writing center. So if you guys have like a thesis, if you have an outline, if you have just an idea, if you have the whole paper done, we can come talk it over with you, compare how what you're writing is matching up against what your professor asks of you. You can come to us at any stage of your writing. We stress that, but we also stress we do not proofread your paper. So if you have any grammatical issues, if you have like sentence structure issues, we ask AI generally because we can't help you with that. And then also the previous page, that calendar is not real. It's just decoration. I was also confused at first. Oh, we also have facilitation. Sorry, I'm not looking at the screen. I was going based off of like because I work at the writing center, so I was just basically listing everything we do. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you for saying that that calendar is not real, Chioma.
Yes.
Not a real calendar. It's just decor. Just decor. Thank you for that, Chioma. I do want to stress that yes, Chioma is absolutely right. We do have access to making a research appointment with myself or another librarian in the department via here, research help, and a make a research appointment button. From there, you'll just need to find your corresponding department and click the schedule appointment button. We can meet, in person or online, depending on your availability. Oh, Chioma, Chioma added a new one.
Yeah, studying for finance is hard, guys.
But you're not alone. There's camaraderie.
We always love a good meme.
Yeah, we do. And I definitely did this. I am definitely guilty of doing this myself. Even now,
Yeah.
even with class, like around my house. So we get it. We are here for you. We support you. And with that being said, thank you for coming to today's session. We realized we went over a bunch of information in about 50 minutes. So there are ways that you can get in touch with us after today. One would be to email me with any concerns or questions about the library portion, research, you know, having a search strategy to find the things that you need for your research paper. Um, Joe, do you want to talk about interlibrary loan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, I don't know if you guys have heard my spiel before, but Interlibrary Loan is a great resource to get articles that you normally don't have access to or that UMBC library can't get access to. Or if you need a book loan, although that does take a little longer, so please give yourself that like 1 to 2 week time for us to get it. But if there's a book that either our library or a different University of Maryland library system does not have, we are happy to try to find another library that can send it to us. If you have any questions, please email us at illcm@umbc.edu. Everybody in my department can look at the email, so like it will never be missed. One of us will get it and one of us will answer, like be sure to answer in a very, very timely fashion. You can reach us either by email or phone too. The number is there. We're open Monday through Fridays from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. I will say one caveat though, like please try not to, this goes back to leaving things last minute. Please try not to submit requests with very short need by dates because that doesn't give us ample time to do our due diligence and search and try to find, and it doesn't also give a lot of time for the other libraries to supply it to us. We do, the articles requests are the fastest way to get something though. So like it does take 1 to 2 days, but sometimes it can take even longer depending on the availability, like which libraries have access to what. So please be patient and try to give us enough time to supply you the necessary resources that you need.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate, thank you, Chioma, for giving us information about the Writing Center. The Writing Center will not take appointments after Wednesday, December 13th. So you have about a week to make appointments with a Writing Center staff member to go over any drafts, any questions. They are available. And then we do have the head of the Writing Center. Her name is Elaine McDougall. She is the person who usually does this workshop, but we're filling in for her today. Her contact information is on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I will now put the link to today's session into chat, just in case if you wanted it. Everything is clickable. We want everybody to be able to have access to the slides as well. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.